Today I have to talk about something incredibly serious. I will be discussing my recent book purchases and also the last book that I read, or the last book that I had a lot of thoughts on, which is The Will of the Many by James Islington. And this is a book that a lot of people really love, my partner included. We actually did a book trade where I read The Will of the Many and he is reading Gideon the Ninth. Let's start with book purchases. I have Pure Wit, the biography of Margaret Cavendish. And I started to read this last year. I was very intrigued by it, but I did hit a bit of a reading slump and I just never finished it. But it was incredibly interesting to me. I love a biography of someone who, to be honest, I've never heard of. A biography of the remarkable and in her time scandalous 17th century writer Margaret Cavendish, who pioneered the science fiction novel. Quote from Margaret Cavendish herself, "My ambition is not only to be an empress, but authoress of a whole world." Me too, Margaret. Me freaking too. What I remember of this book was I just thought her life was so fascinating, and she had very little education, but she really, nothing was getting in the way of her writing down whatever she wanted to write down. I mean, truly nothing. And that was really inspiring to me. And I love reading about things that I just know nothing about. Evocation by S.T. Gibson. And what do you know it? As I was leaving the bookstore, I stumbled upon Odd Spirits, the prequel, the book 0 to this guy, which you can tell. It's just a little prequel, but beautiful cover. And what really grabbed me is that the main character of this series is an attorney by day, psychic by night. Now, if that doesn't grab you, what will? Cannot wait to dig into this. I prefer to read in publishing order rather than timeline order, usually. So I'm going to read this guy first and then this guy, and I'll let you know my thoughts. Next book that hooked me, She Who Became the Sun. This is a reimagined history. She Who Became the Sun reimagines the rise to power of the Ming Dynasty's founding emperor. And this was on a table of trans stories. You know, I'll never miss out on a trans story, especially with a cool cover like this. It's epic, tragic, and gorgeous. It will wreck you and you'll be grateful. Sometimes you need a book to wreck you. I've been reading a lot of very comforting books recently, especially winter. I really like to be cozy, not read anything too tragic, too deep, but as we're going into spring and summer, I do want some more heavy hitters. Next, this one is going back to the cozy, and this is The Murder at the Vicarage, Agatha Christie, a classic. I read Marple, which was 12 new Miss Marple stories by a bunch of different authors, and I just really fell in love. And I realized, oh, I've actually never read an Agatha Christie book. But I love a mystery. I love a low stakes murder mystery, and I love a woman who knows exactly who she is and what's what. And Miss Marple, to me, knows exactly who she is, and she is unafraid of it. Love it. Next one. This one has been on my list forever, and I usually read on my Kindle and just borrow books from the library. But this guy, not at any of my libraries. My Heart is a Chainsaw follows a huge 80s slasher fan who finds herself in the midst of a real life slasher film and she's trying to be final girl vibes. I love a slasher movie, and so I wanted to read this. I normally won't pick up a horror because they just scare me a little bit. I'm a sensitive little guy. This one I picked up last week and I already read. Soma Quick read, graphic novel. Really beautiful art, beautiful landscapes, to be honest. It's about an alien invasion and a comic illustrator who gets caught in the middle of it. She befriends a little alien, and then her best friend is kind of having the romance of his life. Cute read, love it. If you are a creative in a slump, I'd say look at these pretty pictures and relate to Maya, because that's what I did. Next one, this is a book 3, Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales. Oh, Heather Fawcett, never stop writing these. Never stop writing these, because I will eat each and every single one of them up. I mean, the way that I am enamored, not even with the love interest, Wendell Brambleby, who has a ridiculous name, but I am enamored with main lady Emily Wilde, curmudgeon professor, dryadologist, woman after my own heart. I really just can't get enough. I will read these books forever and ever. I was in a big reading slump. My first book that I finished, I didn't finish until March. Finished Will of the Many, read this in about a day. I really just cannot get enough. If you haven't read Emily Wilde or haven't heard of them, they follow dryadologist, fairy, studier of fairy, Emily Wilde, and her adventures to write some books. She has a dog named Shadow, and he is a little bit magical as well. And she has a rival professor named Wendell, who she thinks is super sus. He is low-key a fairy. He makes up all of his research, and we hate him, boo, except until we don't hate him, obviously. These ones are mystery, adventure, romance. It is cozy. You know that everyone is going to make it out alive, but you don't know how it will happen. I feel like, honestly, they're not marketed as mysteries, but to me, they are mysteries. Next, and this is a wild card, Muppets in Moscow. And when I bought this, the bookseller saw this and went, oh, I'm going to give you a spoiler. There is a murder involved in this. What? What do you mean a murder involved? Muppets in Moscow. It is the story of how Sesame Street went to the Soviet Union, and it's written actually, Natasha Rogoff. She's the executive producer and director of Sesame Street in Russia and producer of Sesame Street in Mexico. It's an intriguing memoir, again, about something I know nothing about. My recent reads. I already told you about Soma and Emily Wilde. Let's get into something I didn't love as much as those ones. The Will of the Many by James Islington. Popular book, fantasy darling. It is the story of a boy named Viz. Now, Viz, orphan, and what makes him different is that he has never seeded before. Seeding? What are you talking about? Giving some of your power to someone else. This world runs on a multi-level pyramid called the hierarchy. You give your power to other people. And it's called the will. You cede your will to people. Now, Fizz is an orphan boy. He gets recruited by this powerful guy in the government to infiltrate the Magic Academy and kind of spy and explore some ruins and investigate his adopted father's brother's mysterious death. Okay, and now spoilers ahead. If that sounds intriguing to you, spoilers ahead. I didn't like this book. I felt like this didn't really grab me as a character. I didn't think that it didn't feel like he was in charge of his own story. He was just following the whims of all of the people around him and not really doing his own schemes, which I love a schemer. It kind of reminded me of Mistborn Book 1, where Vin is posing as Valette and infiltrating the high society of Stadriel. But I think the main difference is that Vin had confidants who knew everything about her and what her goal was. You know, Kelsier knew, Sazed knew, the whole crew was in on it. Here, I felt that Viz truly was alone. There was no one who knew his full entire purpose, and I didn't love it. It didn't allow for real connection between Viz and other characters. So even though some of his relationships with other people were compelling, they didn't tug at my heartstrings, because I knew, you know, this isn't a true friendship. At the end of this, Viz is going to betray them no matter what. And so one of his one of his friends dies at the end. I didn't shed a tear, not one, because ultimately, what was Viz going to do? You know? Reveal himself? No. I do think that Viz makes incredibly logical choices and does what I would have done in every situation. Unrealistic. Didn't love that. I think he just followed everything too perfectly. He doesn't lose at all. He is dark and tortured, of course, but he doesn't really face adversity and come out on the bottom. And then the big twist of the book happens in the last 20 pages or so. Really, I have never read the first book of a series that had such middle book syndrome of it was all questions, no answers, in a way that was frustrating, you know? I mean, most fantasy books, I do expect in the beginning you don't know what's going on. I don't expect that by the end of the book, even book 1 of a series, that you still don't really know what's going on. It just didn't hit for me, and I don't care about any of the answers to the questions that were posed. The Strength of the Few, to be honest, when it comes out, I will be reading the Wikipedia synopsis, and if I like the Wikipedia synopsis, then I will read the book. And that's just my truth. Also, I was perusing the fantasy section of my local bookstore when, unprompted, a man came up to me and said, "Oh, you should read Will of the Many." And of course, I replied, "Oh, I just did. I didn't like it very much. It just wasn't for me. I felt like Fizz never lost, and I really had no stake in the game." And he goes, "Oh yeah, I'm so excited for the second book. Did you hear one single word that I said? No, you didn't. And if that was you, don't do that." And I did not enjoy our interaction. Goodbye.